good one. So we've just got people joining us. There are a lot of people joining us today, so I hope they can all find a seat. We'll just give everyone a couple of minutes just to get in and get settled, and then we'll get going. Oops. So just give everyone a couple more seconds and then we'll get cracking. First criteria clinic of the new year. Oh, Callum says, good morning, Callum. How are you? How are you doing? Zanera, good morning. So everybody is on their way in now, so we will get kicked off because this is a huge session. So good morning everybody who is joining us, and welcome to the very first of 2021 Knowledge Bank Criteria Clinic, and today it is all about joint borrowers and sole proprietors. So just to introduce our panel that we have on this morning. So we have 4 people, but one is currently experiencing his computer doing an update, and that is Frankie De Pietro as the National Account Manager from Newcastle Intermediaries. So Frankie will be joining us as soon as his computer's done its thing. But with us right now, we have Emily Smith, who's the National Account Manager for Hinckley and Rugby Building Society. Good morning, Emily. We have Holly Andrews, who is the Intermediary Team Leader and Business Development Manager for Saffron for Intermediaries. Morning, Holly. Morning. And we have Samuel Lee, the Business Development Manager for Dudley Building Society. Good morning, Samuel. How are you doing?
Good morning, everyone. Morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. So before we get kicked off, so in terms of all of the advisors that we've got joining us this morning, a lot of you sent case inquiries in and questions, and we're going to try and get through as many of those as possible. But there were just over 500 of you, so there are a lot of questions to get through. However, if you want to ask questions live while we're on the session for one of our lenders to answer those live, or if you've got a case that you'd like to try and place live as well, just down at the bottom it says Q&A. So if you just put your question in the Q&A there, we will answer that and try and get through it. If we don't get through everybody's questions, what we'll do is we'll pick them up at the end, because we will finish at 11 for everybody, but we will pass those on to the lenders to pick up with you afterwards. So joint borrower, sole proprietor, why are we talking about this morning? So the inquiries of joint borrower, sole proprietor, we saw, especially last year, they've gone, like, they're off the scale. There are so many of them at the minute. So my question to start for the panel is just so we can explain, because we have advisors of all different levels. We have experienced advisors and those that are new to the industry. So when we're talking about joint borrower, sole proprietor, what is that? And how does that differ from the guarantee mortgage? Sorry, that's the guarantor. So can I put a guarantor on the mortgage? Emily, can I come to you first on that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, joint borrower sole proprietor, to put it very simply, is kind of a joint mortgage, but only one person on the deeds. So it came along, so probably about 2 years ago now, when the stamp duty came in for first-time buyers to give them that relief. And obviously not all first-time buyers have the affordability to be able to purchase their own property. So it kind of came in, really, lenders adapted to that stamp duty relief by allowing a joint kind of mortgage. So typically you get a parent-child type relationship, and then only the child being on, or the first-time buyer, if you like, being on the deeds of the property, therefore meaning they can still get that stamp duty relief. It's really up to the lender, I guess, how they look at joint borrower, sole proprietor and guarantors. From our perspective at Hinckley and Rugby, there really isn't that much difference, to be fair. Really, it's just a case of you being a joint applicant on a joint borrower, sole proprietor, whereas a guarantor, you're just kind of guaranteeing the mortgage in the background. You're still liable, obviously, for the payments if they're not made. It does slightly, I think, change how it goes on the credit report. I'm not sure it does for a guarantor, but it will do for a joint borrower sole proprietor. So it's really down to kind of the brokers speaking to the clients and seeing what they're most comfortable with, I think.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Emily. Has anybody else got a different take, Samuel or Holly? Do you have a different take from either Dudley or Saffron in terms of how you would explain a joint borrower sole proprietor mortgage?
I think Emily's hit the nail on the head with that, really. I think probably the key thing is it's about liability for the person that's going on to the mortgage. You know, if you're a classic guarantor, as I suppose we'd call it nowadays, you know, that individual is reliable for the payment. Whereas as a joint applicant or a third applicant or whatever that might be, you're not only liable for that payment, but you're also liable for the debt as well. And of course, not being the proprietor and not being on the deeds, you haven't necessarily got that asset behind you either to back that up. And that's probably one of the key things. And I think that's why independent legal advice is such an important aspect. Something really that as a lender, we don't necessarily get involved with, and we hand it over to the conveyancers really at that point to take care of that. But it will always be a condition of our mortgage offer that does take place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's look at who can benefit from a joint borrower sole proprietor. So we've had a lot of questions around students and professionals, adult children helping their parents who are obviously a little bit older, single parents getting help from family. So Holly, if I could just come to you first on this one, who can benefit from a joint borrower sole proprietor with Saffron?
Yeah, so with Saffron, we have a specific joint borrower sole proprietor product for first-time buyers. We just felt we needed to expand our first-time buyer range as we don't offer guarantor mortgages. So the joint borrower sole proprietor mortgage really was another sort of helping hand. And we've really had it, we had our 90% and 95% products in June, and actually this is the one that's kind of stayed with us ever since. So this is purely for first-time buyers that have a single supporter that can go on the mortgage with them to boost affordability, and we'll end up to 95% on that product as well. So it's a nice sort of a higher loan to value product that we've managed to keep in the range and helps those first-time buyers who are or have been for the last 6 months in desperate need to try and get onto the property ladder.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Holly. Emma, if we come to you next on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, from our perspective, we're quite flexible with how we treat joint borrower sole proprietor. So, for example, they don't have to have a specific career path. It doesn't have to be a parent and child relationship. We can look at all the different circumstances. And I personally have seen, applicants who have been getting divorced and they're relatively low earners, and parents coming on to help with that, but they don't have a specific career path. They're just in a bit of a sticky situation, and they're obviously looking to move on. Or some people who do have a career path, so maybe professionals who are quite early on in their career, bringing mum and dad on. And then, the different types of relationships we're happy to look at. So it doesn't have to just be parent and child. We've had step parents, aunts, uncles, godparents, and that kind of thing. And then we can also look at it sort of the opposite way around. So a younger borrower actually coming on to help an older borrower. That seems to be becoming more sort of popular at the moment. So we look at it as kind of not a typical older person helping a younger person, but in the reverse.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Emily. Samuel, how about Dudley?
Yeah, I think Emily stole my thunder a little bit with that one. Our stance at Dudley is very, very similar, and we offer that flexibility. There's no stipulation there really, on sort of relationships. We can accept up to 4 applicants on a mortgage as well. So you can extend it a little bit further. We will use all 4 incomes. So, you could have 2 parents, 2 friends. We do see those reverse guarantor sort of scenarios, which Emily outlined there, where you've perhaps got a younger applicant helping an older applicant. So yeah, flexibility is probably the main thing. And again, it's the plausibility of it all, really. I think that's what it ultimately comes down to. Affordability is of course massive in these cases, and it's often why the scenario is born. So the key thing is ensuring that ongoing affordability is there, you know, regardless of how the scenario looks. And it's understanding that we need to look at each applicant on their own merit, and that means taking into account, yes, their income, but it's also looking at them as their personal expenditure as well, including personal and credit commitments. It all needs to go into the pot. You know, we can't have 3 applicants on the mortgage, but then expect to only look at the primary applicant's expenditure and base it on that. So it needs to be well-rounded in terms of what we're looking at.
No, that's great. And I am going to come on to things like affordability and LTV in quite a lot of detail very shortly, but just sticking with who can benefit from it. I've got a question. So joint borrower sole proprietor, in terms of the way that you look at the applicants, can that be mixed with something like right to buy or shared equity? Can you do a bit of a mix and match with this? And does anybody accept that?
We don't have anything sort of like right to buy, or we're not currently in the shared ownership space either. I guess the only thing that comes to mind that we could match it with is gifted equity. So, you know, if somebody's looking to, you know, if a parent is looking to gift equity in their property to their son or daughter, or however the situation arises, then we can look at that. Similarly with gifted deposit, you know, if someone wants to gift an actual cash amount, then that's absolutely fine as well. But yeah, we at Hinckley and Rugby, we haven't sort of got any shared ownership or right to buy scenarios.
Okay, no problem. Holly or Samuel, anything there that you would be able to sort of mix and match joint borrower sole proprietor with, in terms of whether it be housing schemes or anything like that?
At the moment, there's nothing at Saffron that we have alongside that. Very similar to Emily at Hinckley, we do the gifted equity and gifted deposits, but we don't at the moment look at any of sort of the housing schemes of right to buy or shared ownership.
And just to clarify, actually, Holly and Emily, so if there was a gifted deposit, that could come then perhaps from could that still come from somebody who wasn't on the mortgage?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, for example, I mean, some lenders, particularly perhaps the high street, where their criteria isn't as flexible, they might have issue with that. We've also done joint borrower sole proprietor for like non-married couples as well. I've you know, personally dealt with a few different scenarios there, and that person that's going on as a joint borrower but not on the as a proprietor on the deed, they can still gift that deposit from our perspective, providing they can just send a gifted letter.
Brilliant. That does widen that help out even further, doesn't it? Because we've got the joint borrower, somebody who's not going on mortgage deeds, but they can use their income to help with affordability, and then the deposit that can come from somebody else who's not on the mortgage in any way at all. So that's a really good point. So I want to jump into some questions and some cases now. So let's just have a little look at this case. So Adam has a divorced couple who so they need a mortgage on her house. The income is from him. The children live with her, but they're both very amicable. So this is a couple that are divorcing. Would you be happy to accept that as joint borrower sole proprietor in terms of applicants?
Yeah, we would. Yeah, I mean, as I say, divorced couples is something that we come across, or non-married couples. So it could be that she's also got a new partner wanting to come on. So yeah, that scenario would be fine for us.
Brilliant. So that's the kind of scenario. So Marty, you asked, does this type of mortgage, is it available just for first-time buyers? So definitely not just first-time buyers. So there are a lot of options there. So Adam, that's perhaps one that you can look at there. And Geraldine wants to know, a client is looking to purchase a property because the sale of her own house has fallen through. So this looks to me like a non-simultaneous. So they're perhaps looking to do, so it's whether it would fit on a non-simultaneous case, or whether the joint borrower sole proprietor would fit in that circumstance. So is that a scenario that you could accommodate? So the house sale's fallen through. Obviously, she's looking at spreading affordability now across 2 properties, but the other one's still up for sale. It's just a case of when that sells. Samuel, is that something Dudley could look at?
We could certainly look at it. Yeah. I think ultimately with that property that's up for sale, that's still being there in the background, it would have to be factored into affordability in order for us to proceed with the case. So if it fits in that respect, then absolutely, that's fine. And then for the advisor, it might be something to pick up in terms of the stamp duty clawback then, because this would be an additional property, I guess, that the client's purchasing. But in principle, we could certainly have a look, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to come on to taxation and stamp duty a little bit later on. So, yeah, that's great. So that is a possible option. I didn't realise that was something that you would perhaps look at. Holly, Emily, is that a case for Geraldine that you could perhaps consider?
Yeah, I think so. I guess the only kind of concern from our perspective as a lender and may also be from Samuel's and Holly's is the element of short-term lending potentially.
Yes.
Is it for sale in the background, depending obviously what equity they've got in it. You know, it might just be something that we'd have to look at as a potential short-term lending case. But there is ways around that. You know, if they're happy to take a product with ERCs, then you know that kind of eliminates that concern. So, but it's just something.
No, that's great, brilliant. So we've just looked at who can benefit from it, and as we've seen that just about everybody really can benefit from this. There aren't many you know, scenarios that sort of wouldn't fit in terms of the people that can benefit. But what I want to look at now is who can go on the mortgage. So, so I know we've just touched on this slightly, but we have had a couple of more in-depth questions. So we're particularly looking at, does it have to be a blood relative? Can it be a sibling? Can it be a friend? Can it be an auntie and uncle? I know you mentioned like godparents have gone on there. So probably the easiest way to ask this question is any restrictions of anybody who can't go on the mortgage? I think that's perhaps the easiest way to look at that. Holly, if I come to you first from Saffron, who would you not be happy as an applicant on joint borough sole proprietor mortgage?
Yeah, so for us, you would be looking at that we wouldn't accept sort of friends, colleagues, that kind of thing. For us, it's close family members. It used to be in our criteria immediate family members, but we found that just too restrictive. So for us, we can look at, you know, foster parents, adoptive parents, and a real mix really. So yeah, we saw the need to expand our range.
Brilliant. Sorry, I'm just going to stop you there and say good morning, Frankie from Newcastle.
Oh, good afternoon. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I apologise to everyone. I thought I was going to be nice and clever and log on it quite nice and early this morning. And my current work computer is sitting there trying to do some updates, which it's been doing for the last half hour. So apologies, but I'm here now.
Don't worry, you can always rely on technology to let you down when you're doing a live webinar, Frankie. It's an unwritten rule. Frankie, I'm just gonna keep on with this question, and I'm going to come back to you just to catch up on Newcastle's perspective, if that's all right. Great stuff. So Emily, sorry, thank you, Holly, for that. So you are looking for not friends, not colleagues in the case of Saffron. So Emily, I want to come to you next. So easier to ask you, who won't you accept?
Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because we look at each case on its individual merits. So generally we are the same as Holly said, no friends or colleagues. But there has been the odd situation where we have accepted a friend and we've kind of understood their relationship and we've got comfort around it. So I wouldn't say never, but it would very much depend on the quality of the case, I think.
Yeah, okay. And Carl's just asked, do you accept, so like, for example, foster care workers, so if they've had a child in their foster care, and that child's grown up ready to buy the first plot, is that something perhaps you look at, Emily?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and like I say, it's about the story, I think, from the lender's perspective. It's really understanding what their relationship is. And, you know, that's why I mentioned sort of godparents and step parents, because, you know, although they're not blood relatives, you know, their relationship can be that, you know, they've been in that person's life, you know, probably more than some blood relatives. So it's very much about the story, I think, for us. So yes, happy to look at that.
Brilliant, thank you. And Samuel, who won't you accept?
Yeah, there's no stipulations really in our lending criteria. So yeah, quite flexible, I think, in that regard. And as Emily's just touched on there, and I think this probably goes for all building societies, a lot of the time it's about the story. You know, what can you tell us? What can you tell the underwriters? How can you position the case? And if you can build a case, if you can show us the rationale, if you can build the story, then that's going to put you in a much better place than, you know, perhaps just chucking a case in and seeing what happens. I think, you know, a key thing for advisors out there is, you know, use the biggest building society USP, which is come and talk to us. And I think that really does go a long way. So yeah, from Dudley's perspective, paint the picture and we'll be able to perhaps have a look at that on its own merit.
Brilliant. Bhavani's just asked a question. Bhavani's saying, would you accept cousins as joint borrowers? So that's pretty much a yes there. You know, everybody would look at that. So it's just about the story. Frankie, I'm going to ask you this question now. I'm just going to backtrack just ever so slightly to Newcastle's criteria. So we're talking about, at the minute, we're just talking about who can go on the mortgage for joint borrower sole proprietor. And we said it's easier to say who can't. So with regards to Newcastle, who can't go on that mortgage as a joint borrower?
Hopefully by sort of flipping that round a little bit, it should answer the question quite swiftly, if that's all right for you, Nicola. So for us, what we're looking for when it's a joint mortgage and it's a sole proprietor sort of part of our proposition is that we would expect the two applicants to be family members. So usually it's, if you class it, the trunk of the family tree. So it's mum or dad, grandma, granddad, or son or daughter. But there's instances where we have ventured out to aunt or uncle, even so more sort of cousins as well. So again, as Samuel just mentioned there, you know, it is about understanding what that good lending decision is. So the more conversation we can have at the start, the better.
No, that's brilliant. And just to go back to the question, we were talking about who can benefit from it. So we were saying there's obviously a lot of different scenarios about who can benefit that, whether it be parents helping children, children helping parents, students, professionals. Just from Newcastle's point of view, who do you see as the people that can benefit from joint borrower sole proprietor?
Yeah, I think it's a really fun topic because it's one of these pieces of innovation that's came out through conversations with brokers, distributors and lenders all working together, sort of overcome challenges. For me, we initially built it thinking it was going to be a first-time buyer product. So, you know, it was available for first-time buyers, it's available for purchases, but it's also available for remortgages as well. But what we've seen is, and if you think of 2020 as a whole, so we've done around £1 billion worth of lending, and 3% of them applications were on joint mortgage sole proprietor products. And that's not all just for first-time buyers. You can flip it round, and with our age at the end of the term for the eldest applicant being 80, what we're seeing is younger members of the family are assisting older members of the family too. So it can be used in both ways. And then you can really utilise the product again. Just tell us to shut up, Nicola, if you want us to. With different parts of our criteria. So, you know, it's a real good example that I got off one of our BDMs earlier on today, whilst my computer was updating. And what he mentioned is we used joint mortgage sole proprietor, but we also used it as part of an inter-family purchase sale. So if you think of the property that mum is selling to son, was worth £100,000. So our joint mortgage sole proprietor is currently 80% LTV. And we've done it as an inter-family purchase. So mum moved out of that house, but stayed on the mortgage effectively with son who moves onto it as a new purchase. The deposit comes from the gifted equity, and mum moves out into rented accommodation. That to us was acceptable, and it's a real unique solution to maybe mum wanting to downsize or mum wanting to upsize, and son wanting to get into the property ladder with limited resources available to him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's just such a flexible proposition, isn't it? There's just so many, and when you start digging, as we are today, and getting under the hood of it, you just find so many scenarios. From your immediate thought is that you just go to mum and dad helping kids, don't you? But then you look at that and it's widened out, and it is brilliant. So let's have a look now, because one of the big things that's come up is maximum age, or how old, and how that affects the term. So I just want to look at this now and spend a bit of time on this. So we've got a lot of questions on this. So I'm just going to run around you all quickly just to tell us what your criteria is with regards to age and maximum term. And then I'll run through some questions, because we've had a lot of questions and cases that people are trying to place. So Samuel from Dudley, if I come to you first on age and maximum term.
Yeah, I'll try and make this as simple as possible, as it should be really, but it's not always. So maximum term, we offer terms of up to 40 years. Of course, you have to tie your maximum age into that. So we don't have any lines in the sand necessarily on what the maximum age is. However, at the moment, we aren't lending to clients that are either already in retirement, regardless of their age. So if you've got a retired person that's 55, they're not working, we couldn't accept them on the mortgage at present, unfortunately. And the same goes for into retirement lending. So if you've got someone that's say 55 and they want a 30-year term, they're going to retire at age 75, again, that wouldn't be acceptable because they're going to retire mid-term. So at the moment, we are capping terms at an applicant's intended retirement age. And that can then vary depending on the scenario. So, you know, if you've perhaps got a manual worker, the likelihood is that the cap then will be at pensionable age when the state pension kicks in. If you've got someone that's in a non-manual role, you can then look at extending that slightly. So I'd probably say 75 without that being written in policy is probably your benchmark. And likewise, then if you've got maybe someone who's a limited company director, can take a back seat in the business, then there's no reason why we can't extend that term further. So I know it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, and it should be a little bit more simple, but that's how we're looking at things at the moment. So your cut-off is intended retirement age.
Brilliant, thank you, Samuel. Emily, if I can come to you next, what's Hinckley & Rugby's view on both term and maximum age?
Yeah, sure. No, I agree with Samuel. It should be quite simple, but it's really not when it comes to ages. But as kind of is, we will accept earned income up to age 75. That's really for every worker. We don't necessarily restrict that for manual workers. And then we have a maximum age of 85. So if they're going sort of over 75 up to 85, then we'll have to look at obviously the pension income to see if that will support the loan. So that's sort of our policy, and our maximum term is also 40 years. What I do want to just quickly mention is we have a split term offering. So with joint borrower sole proprietor, we can actually also split the term. So this really helps really well when you've got an older applicant. So it might be that, you know, dad's on the mortgage, he might be already, I don't know, 65, let's say, and then you've got a younger applicant who's only maybe 30. We can look at what the younger applicant can afford on their own and do that over a 40-year term, and then look at what dad needs to support sort of the shortfall, and then do that over a shorter term. So overall, it means that the monthly payment's a lot more affordable because a big chunk of the loan is on a longer term. So we can look at that as well.
Brilliant. Samuel, if I just check with you, will you do split terms as well? Is that not
They've got the edge on us there.
No. No, I just wanted to check because I was going to ask about split terms after, so thank you for that, Emily. That's brilliant. Holly, if I come to you next on age and term.
Yeah, so for us, the maximum age of the supporter on the JBSP first time buyer product is the age of 70. But the term we don't restrict by the supporter's age, so we can actually offer up to a 40-year term on this product. But what we're looking at is the first-time buyers' affordability and their likelihood that they can remortgage and remove the supporter in the next 5 to 10 years as their salary increases. So that's why we don't restrict the term on that product.
Brilliant. And do you, so you don't do split terms because you don't really need to, I guess, in terms of your proposition. Brilliant. Thank you. Frankie, Newcastle, ages and terms and split terms if you do them.
So our max sort of term, if you wish, would be a 40-year term, but max age at the end of the term is age 80. To answer the question around the split term, that's not something that we would currently support, but obviously one of our building society friends will, which is fantastic. But for us, I think what we look at in terms of income is both applicants must have an income. Now that could be pension income from a more elderly applicant on that one. And with regards to earned income, it's all around the plausibility of the job role, and is there a plan B in place? So in effect, if you wanted a 15-year term, you're currently 65 years of age, you're working in a manual role, we might want to know, well, we will want to know what your plan B is. If you're a limited company director of a building firm with a large shareholding percentage and you subcontract the work out, then that's more plausible that income could continue. So again, it's just them conversations with your BDMs before the case comes in to give you a bit of confidence that we are the right lender for your client.
No, that's brilliant. And so just to hop to a couple of questions. So Simon, you've asked this morning, can lenders look at the term based on the younger applicant rather than the older borrower? So that's definitely a yes. Or split terms are something that is an option, perhaps, especially we talked with Emily and Hinckley Rugby. And then just a couple of cases that are trying to place. So Stella has a case to place. She says, Dad will go on to the mortgage, but he's 60. Can I have a 25-year term if he has pension proof? So yeah, that's definitely one. So Holly and Emily are nodding there. So that's so perhaps two homes for that one there, Stella. And then Sam. So Sam has a case where he has, so the mother's divorced, age 40, needing support from for the application, but the parent is over 65. So is that one for anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on whether mum's still earning, whether she's retired. We'll have a look at that. I mean, as I say, we can go to 85 with the retired income. And that might be one where we could actually, you know, split the term as well, depending on, you know, what mum needs to support, because we've got that younger borrower there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And then just talking about term, Linda's asked, so the maximum term, is the maximum term capped with the main applicant's age or the supported applicant's age? I think we've probably just covered that. So we've gone around there, and obviously we've got split terms, which are also an option. So hopefully that answers that for you as well. So just on the terms, are they able to do this with interest only borrowing as well? Is that something that you can combine with a joint borrower sole proprietor? Anybody? Yeah, getting a lot of nods.
Unfortunately, not with us at the moment.
No. So with Dudley and Hinckley you can, and with Newcastle and Saffron not. Is that right? Yeah. Perfect. Right, I'm just going to show you now, because we just had a quick question about how to source products, and also how to, and is it any different? So I'm just going to give everybody a breather a second and just show you this, and then we're going to go straight into talking about credit checking and credit searching and affordability next, before we move on to things like the legal stuff and all of that. So I'm just going to share my screen. So bear with me for 1 second. So what the question that we've been asked is, so on how do we source the products? Now, obviously, with regards to our knowledge bank, we're just looking at criteria. So I'm going to show you that in a second when I just find how to share that particular screen. And then here we go. So I'm going to show you. So you should be able to see my screen now. So you would just search as you would on product sourcing, and if you want to have a look at joint borrower sole proprietor on Knowledge Bank, you just start a search, select residential, and as soon as you start typing, so joint borrower, anything like that you can put in, it will pick up at that, and then if you select that very quickly, you'll do your search. Now you can add other things to this. So remember we talked about interest only, whether you can do it on things like housing schemes or anything, you know, maximum terms and all that. So any other, I mean, if you wanted to browse criteria, you know, you can have a little look at any of the other criteria that's on there. We talked about deposits. So as Emily said earlier, you can add deposits. So it could be a family gift deposit that you want to add in there. So lots of different, it could be the property that's an issue. So anything that you want to have a look at, and you can put that in as many as you like in the search. You're not limited, and then you'll do a search. I've just done this on joint borrower sole proprietor just to show you, and then the answers. So it's a very, very simple traffic light system. The yeses come to the top, the no's come to the bottom, and in the middle we've got the yes with conditions, yes by exception, and we refer to lenders. So as we look at the top here, these are the lenders that will do it. If I just quickly scroll down to the bottom, by the time we get to these lenders just won't do joint borrower sole proprietor. So if they've come to the top of product sourcing for anything specific, then you can look on there. And what you can also do as well is you can click into here. We'll just have a little look into any of these, and you can read a little bit more. So perhaps where it's gone on a little bit more detail, you can have a look in there as well. And you can also put your own notes on as well, which is fantastic. So if you've made any notes from today, so if we have a little look down here, so let's pick on, so here we go. So you could put your notes in, and you could put, Frankie said, live, and we all heard it. So Frankie said, add that note, So while you're watching, you can put your notes. If I just refresh that page rather than doing a search again, so those notes are in there. So the next time you're looking under residential, joint borrower, sole proprietor, and you go down to, I've missed it, where is he? There you are, for Newcastle. You see the little notes lozenges on there, and straight away you can see the date and time and what Frankie said. That's set in stone because he said it. So just to give you a little idea there on how to look at things very quickly and make notes as we're going along. So I just want to come on to, before we go on to affordability, I just want to jump onto credit scoring and credit checking. And so because we've had a few questions as well around understanding more about who is credit checked or credit scored when they go on as an applicant, as a joint applicant, and also as well a lot of questions around if the sole proprietor has poor credit, can you use a joint borrower for that? So Holly, can I come to you first on that one?
Yeah, of course. So for us, we credit check every applicant. So the supporter may not be on the deeds, but they'll still be on the application. So it'll be proof of income, proof of ID and address. For us, the credit score, we use Experian as the credit search. And actually, our criteria is that the application itself, the applicants must have a minimum score of 600. So when the application comes in, the underwriters will only ever see a joint score. So it just needs to be 600 and above from there.
Right, that's interesting. So that's a joint score on the joint borrower and the sole proprietor then. Brilliant.
Yes, yeah. So it definitely helped with those adverse cases.
Fantastic.
If they've got a lower score.
Fantastic. Because I know quite often, I mean, my background is a broker and you quite often sort of, people would say, oh, can I go on to help boost their score, or can they stay off to not affect the score and stuff. So that is something, you know, even looking at credit score, this might be of an assistance then. Brilliant. Yeah. Frankie, how does Newcastle look at that adverse credit and joint borrower sole proprietor?
So it's quite similar, to be fair. We also use Experian for our credit search and profiling, but we do run a full decision in principle, which does have a soft footprint on a credit file. So it's the overall score of the applicants combined, really, is what we're looking at. With our decision in principles engine, what you will get is you'll get a yes, you'll get a refer, or you'll get a no. If it falls into refer, it's always worthwhile adding some additional notes to the boxes which are available. But also if it's a no and you feel as though the client might have had a credit blip or a slight hiccup, it's a conversation to have with your business development manager who can help you present that case, because although the computer said no, if it's a good case, we'll have the ability to make it say yes.
That's brilliant. Okay, that is really good. And so again, the benefit of building societies on these kinds of products. Emily, how about Hinkley and Rigby?
Yeah, so we don't credit score. There's no element of credit scoring with us. So we're just looking at credit search. We use Equifax. We are searching all of the applicants. So it'd be the same with joint borrower, sole proprietor and guarantor. We're still going to be searching them because obviously the liability is placed with them. I will say that Hinkley and Rigby is not really your answer to adverse credit. We just don't really have very flexible criteria when it comes to things like that. We're happy obviously with, you know, the odd missed payment, or maybe even a default on something quite small like a mail order or a mobile phone, something like that. But yeah, we're not really that flexible when it comes to adverse credit. But that being said, we don't score, so obviously there's other reasons why people's score might be low. So, you know, maybe too many credit searches, not enough credit. So we still can look at that kind of, you know, client who's got a low score.
No, that's brilliant. And, you know, I know that advisors really appreciate when lenders say, actually, what we're not good at is this as well. That is, you know, it does save a lot of time, and advisors appreciate that, honestly. So thank you for that, Emily. Samuel, how about Dudley?
So we use TransUnion, and we don't credit score, we credit search. Our stance, again, quite similar really to Hinkley's. We've got a little bit of flexibility adverse wise. I wouldn't say we're a heavy adverse lender by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly more light adverse, but things like missed payments, there is some flexibility there. Defaults, to give you an example, and CCJs, if you're looking at 80% LTV and under, over 3 years old, you're looking at a maximum of £5,000 that we can accept, and that's probably your top line really. Criteria does break down into smaller divisible chunks, so I'd advise any of the advisors who are on here to go and pick up our lending criteria and have a look. What I probably will say is adverse is an area where, although we've got a policy around it, it's probably one of the few areas where we don't really have any flexibility. So, you know, if our maximum limit is 1,000 or 5,000, if you've got one which is 5,200 or 5,300, the likelihood is that we're not going to be able to get around that. So the policy around adverse is really one to be adhered to, I guess. And in terms of who we check, it's all of the applicants.
Brilliant, thank you. So that probably answers your question, Nick, that you've asked, and that is father wants to help the son to buy, but the son has poor credit. Will this case possibly go forward depending on credit checks? The short answer to that is yes, it possibly will. So definitely one to look at there. So I want to move on now to LTVs and affordability. So affordability is such a big issue, and then to sort of finish, because I'm conscious of time, there's so many questions to get through. I want to get through as many of these as we can as well. But talking about the legal side of things, stamp duty, tax implications, exit strategies, and underwriting. So a lot to fit into the last 20 minutes of the session, but let's just go. So quick round robin on LTVs. Holly, I know you mentioned earlier 95% LTV for Saffron.
Yeah, that's correct.
So Saffron 95%. Frankie, what have we got on Newcastle?
Yeah, so when we've got our products back, it would be back at 95, but currently it's at 80% LTV.
Okay, brilliant. You're not going to give us a heads up of when those 95s are coming back, are you?
You'll be the first person to know, Nicola.
For me. What we will do as well is we so when they tell us, we, as you know, Knowledge Bank subscribers, we send out our criteria update emails. They go out on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and we give you all of that information, so you've got that in bullet point form. So they're really popular when they go out. So as soon as Newcastle come back, we will let you know. Emily, how about Hinckley Rugby?
Yeah, so hot off the press, we are back at 85 and 90 today.
Brilliant.
That's exciting. Unfortunately, not for joint borrower sole proprietor, so there is a bit of a dampener to it, but I think it's only a matter of time before we get back at joint borrower sole proprietor at that loan to value. We're just, taking small steps, I think, at the moment, but it's a positive move forward.
It is, definitely. So where are you at today with joint borrower sole proprietor? What's the max level?
We're at 80% with joint borrower.
That. Okay, brilliant. But you've gone higher on the other stuff. Fantastic. And Samuel, where's Dudley on joint borrower sole proprietor?
Yeah, we can offer joint mortgage sole proprietor up to 90% LTV. And 90% product at the moment is postcode restricted. So there's a few postcodes within Birmingham and the Black Country that we can accept. So across England and Wales at the moment, it's 80% that we are capped at. Hopefully in the next week or so, we will be increasing that to 85. So watch this space.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, yeah, as soon as you guys let us know, we'll give everybody the heads up on our criteria update emails. Right, let's jump into affordability. Okay, so what everybody wants to know is, how do you calculate affordability? So with regards to a joint borrower, sole proprietor mortgage, I'm going to go around to everybody just so you can explain how you calculate affordability. And then we've got some more specific questions, and also some cases that we can try and place on here. So Samuel, if I stick with you, how do you calculate affordability on a JBSP case?
Yeah, I think probably the easiest thing for the advisors watching to think about is, forget about joint mortgage sole proprietor. This is a 2, 3, 4 applicant mortgage, and it's as simple as that. So we'll take all the incomes into consideration. So we'll take up to 4, and in the same breath, we will be looking at the commitments for each borrower, personal and committed expenditure, and essentially that all needs to go into the pot. And we're looking for affordability to meet across the mortgage term for the entirety of the term, and it's as simple as that for us, really.
Okay, so just to clarify on that then, so we're talking about affordability, so we're talking about other existing commitments in terms of loans, credit cards, high purchase mortgages even. How about the other commitments of affordability of, the bills, shopping, that kind of thing, daily living? So you're taking all that into consideration?
All needs to go in. I think the final thing I'll probably mention is there's no, we don't determine sort of minimum incomes, or there needs to be a certain split of income between the applicants. So if you've got a very classic scenario of this, where you've got maybe a parent helping a child, there's nothing saying that the parent can't be earning 100k a year, the child earning 10k. As long as the parent can theoretically support everything, then that's perfectly acceptable.
Brilliant. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Emily, how does Hinckley and Rugby view affordability?
Very similar, to be fair. We look at, again, you don't really need to think of affordability as a joint borrower sole proprietor. It's just really assessed as we can have up to 4 applicants on the mortgage as well, and no minimum from our perspective. And obviously we are taking into account the joint borrower's own financial commitments. We use a standard sort of ONS calculation when it comes to the affordability of bills and shopping and that kind of thing. But then we can look at the bank statements if it does fail on affordability on ONS, because it might not be realistic to how they live their life. So we can have a look at that. And then from a split term perspective, we're obviously looking at what the kind of the proprietor can afford on their income and their net free cash requirement, and then what obviously over a longer term, and then what the older borrower can support the shortfall over a shorter term. So yeah, it's very similar, but we are looking obviously at taking expenditure.
Fantastic, thank you. Frankie, how about Newcastle? What are you like on affordability? How are you assessing that?
Yeah, so the calculator's live online, and again, it's very similar. So you will take both incomings and outgoings from both applicants. So that's what we're interested in. So you would list both of them. All we require is that both applicants actually have an income. So we're requiring them to be in some form of employment or receipt of some sort of, say, for example, pension benefit. And once that's all been taken into consideration, the age is calculated, the term's calculated on the age of the eldest applicant. That's really it around the affordability piece. I mean, you might be surprised at the numbers it spits out when you try the calculator. But yeah, it's all online. It's been updated recently as well, and it's got our CAT sort of LTI still in the background there as well, which currently is a 4.49.
Brilliant, thank you. Holly, how about Saffron?
Yeah, so ours is slightly different to everybody else's. So on our JBSP product, we require the first-time buyer to be able to cover 70% of the loan size applied for, and then the supporter then covers a 30% shortfall. Now, what we have done is we have designed a JBSP calculator that helps you run through that application. So you first test the first-time buyer's affordability to get that 70%, and then you go on to then check the supporter's affordability to cover the 30%. And it's under the calculators tab on our website. If anybody does get stuck or needs assistance, the telephone team are all happy to help them run through with calculations for that.
That's brilliant, because actually we've just had a question from Philip. Philip's asked the question, do lenders' affordability calculators allow for JBSP applications? So Holly, Saffron's got your own specific calculator for joint borrower sole proprietor, and I'm right in thinking Dudley, Hinckley and Rugby and Newcastle, you're just using your normal calculator with that number of applicants in, aren't you? Would that be right?
We don't have a joint borrower sole proprietor calculator on our website, and similarly we don't have the split term on our website. So it is slightly different than the main calculator, because that will assume just kind of one kind of property, whereas joint borrower sole proprietor is potentially 2 properties. So what I would say is just give the telephone team a call from our perspective and run the case through with us.
Brilliant. Okay. Quick question from me, and I'm going to ask this because I am sure that our advisors today will got people in this situation. Can you use joint borrower sole proprietor? So the joint borrower, can they help the sole proprietor if they were furloughed?
So at the moment for us, our policy has been really flexible with the furlough scheme and with people just during the pandemic. It's that you know, and I'm sure the guys will agree on the call, you know, it's taking that case by case view and understanding a little bit more about the situation, understanding the industry that they're in, you know, how long have they got a return to work date, how long are they expected to be on furlough, you know, if the scheme is extended, that kind of thing. So, you know, it's that case by case. So for us, we always say pick up the phone, give us a call, and we'll see what we can do to help. You know, if it doesn't quite fit, we've got the bespoke pricing model as well that we can offer. So yeah.
Fantastic. You were nodding there, Emily, so that's something that Hinckley Rugby can help with then as well.
Yeah, very similar to what Holly says. Pick up the phone, let's run through the case, let's kind of understand the story and the industry that they're in, and you know, if they've got a return to work date, that kind of thing. So yeah, just
brilliant. Samuel, Frankie, any different there? Or are you still happy to look at that if somebody's been furloughed?
I think for us on that one, we could accept the furloughed applicant onto the mortgage. However, in order to use their income, the applicant would need to be back at work and we'd need to see 1 month's pay slip. So again, it would come back to affordability. If we can evidence that the other applicants can meet affordability using their income, then, you know, we can sort of crack on and proceed. But if we're reliant on the furlough income, that applicant has got to be back. Yeah.
Same for you, Frankie.
Yeah, sitting in the same sort of camp with Samuel there, really, you know, from a furloughed applicants at the moment is not one that we are sort of accepting. But if they are back at work and we can see them on pay slip, then we can certainly look to use that for affordability.
Brilliant. And then just a quick one on affordability before we move on. We have had a couple of questions around benefits. So if you have the sole proprietor who's just on benefits, so there's not necessarily any earned income, it's just on benefits, is that acceptable as long as the affordability is there with the joint borrower? Does anyone have a problem with that, or is that something that you don't look at?
We don't consider benefit income, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the same. We accept it, but it would need to be alongside earned income.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So I think that's quite a lot on affordability there, which was something that a lot of people wanted to know about. We've had a couple of questions around ILA. So Kevin's asked, any stipulations on who provides ILA? Must be the bank's own preferred solicitor. Or can it be a qualified solicitor firm? And that just fits nicely because I'm just about to talk about legals. So where are we at? So that was a really good question, Kevin, because that's sort of the crux of what everybody's asking with regards to legals. So ILA, sorry, independent legal advice is what we're shorthanding that for. So do you does everybody require the joint borrower to take independent legal advice, or are you just saying that that's recommendation? Do you mandate that? Holly, if I come to you first from Saffron.
Yeah, so it is part of our requirements that the supporter must get independent legal advice, and it will be a condition on our mortgage offer.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Frankie?
Yeah, so again, with us, it is something that we do recommend, and we do say that you should obtain independent legal advice. It's not someone from our sort of own recommended solicitor, but we do say that you should take independent legal advice.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, so it's a condition of our offer. We don't, I think we don't actually require, I don't think, the proof. We just advise that they get it, and they can choose any solicitor to do that.
Right, brilliant. Thank you. And Samuel?
Same here for us. It'll be a condition of the offer, and we're just expecting the solicitor to satisfy the condition. We will expect the client to use their own solicitor. But what that really means is we won't instruct the solicitor for them. So we can still do dual representation, providing that solicitor that they've chosen has joined our panel. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so and just while we're on the legal side of things, so just to be clear, we're talking about joint borrower, sole proprietor. The joint borrower does not go on the title deeds to there. However, they are responsible to keep up repayments on the mortgage, so they are wholly and solely responsible. So that is the case with regards to joint borrower sole proprietor, which then brings us on to tax implications and stamp duty. So bearing in mind they're not on the title deeds, they are on the mortgage. what are the rules around stamp duty? I suppose I should sort of say, you know, obviously we're not saying you should give anyone tax advice, but just for your own information, or you get asked this, then you can signpost your clients to the right advice. So stamp duty, does this affect the joint borrower with regards to any stamp duty implications?
No, I mean, that's really, I think, why joint borrower sole proprietor was designed, to be fair, to kind of give that benefit of the stamp duty relief for a first-time buyer, where they can't actually, you know, have that affordability, or they don't have the affordability to take on the loan themselves. So from our perspective, you know, we are aware that that's why people do joint borrower sole proprietor. Some lenders, I don't know, you know, aren't very comfortable with that, but I you know, I think that's just the way it is. Obviously, we wouldn't necessarily want the broker to say to us, "I'm doing this because we can get around the stamp duty." But you know, I think if that's what they're doing, then that's what the product was designed for. So, yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And actually, talking around getting around the tax, we've had a question. So Andrew's asked. He says, "I've got a husband and wife." Selling her home and looking to upsize. The husband wants to buy a buy-to-let and does not want to be on the title of the residential property. So this is where you are using this product potentially to avoid tax, the old avoidance, evasion. So how would you view that as a lender? I mean, I'm quite sure you wouldn't encourage tax evasion. How about a little bit of good spirited tax avoidance? Is that something, or would you take a view on that?
I think
go on, sorry, Emily.
Sorry, it legally they can do that. So whether it's tax avoidance, evasion, I guess it's a conversation, isn't it? But from our perspective, you know, we would still look at the case. And we do also, you know, from an affordability perspective, kind of taking a step away from the stamp duty, we also do buy-to-let joint borrower sole proprietors. So there's still that affordability. If there's that affordability issue on the buy-to-let, we can look at joint borrower sole proprietor on there. So I think from our perspective, we look at the fact that, you know, the product was designed for this, you know, to help first-time buyers still get that stamp duty relief, but equally for affordability as well.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So Samuel, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to come in on that, and I think one of the things for the advisors to look out for is beneficial ownership. So in the scenario that you outlined there, you know, if you've got a husband and wife and all, and they're still going to be residing at the property, they are married. You know, if HMRC did come and look into that, they could probably justify that, albeit one of the applicants isn't, or one of the owners isn't on the deeds, they are still benefiting and retaining an interest in that property. Yeah. So I think things like that, it's worth probably digging deeper into, and just double checking that there wouldn't be any potential clawback or ramifications of doing that. So, you know, especially for mortgage advisors out there, you know, it might just be worth getting that sort of second line check on that, whether that's from, you know, an IFA or a tax specialist, just to double check that, yeah, again, although it might look good on paper, as you can imagine, the government don't want to be giving away thousands in stamp duty if they can help it. Similar to what you might see with inheritance tax as well, when properties are being gifted and things like that. So it's just retaining that ownership. I think if that's happening, it's probably not something that a lender will look into necessarily, because it's not really our business, if I'm being honest, if everything else fits the box. But just something maybe to be aware of. And I think with joint mortgage sole proprietor, and this is probably going a little bit off topic now, but it's almost that future planning as well, and what implications taking this type of mortgage will have on the other borrowers, because it's not sometimes as simple as, okay, they're going on this mortgage, but then what does that mean for that person in the future if they want to obtain further credit and that sort of thing. So it's just the planning around it, which I guess, you know, just needs to be taken care of when you're looking at these type of cases.
Yeah, and that's a really good point actually as well. You know, it's something that, and not necessarily to be entered into lightly. Any financial obligation with another person shouldn't be entered into lightly, but especially because it may affect then future affordability for that joint borrower. So just as we finish then, because I'm conscious we've got so many questions and we will get answer them when we go offline. But in terms of exit strategies, is it just a transfer of equity when the sole proprietor is in a position to afford? So if we have that, to just pick up on that situation then, Samuel, so you have somebody that's happy to do it now, they've done it and that it's allowed that person to buy a property, but now the joint borrower wants to be able to buy their own, the sole proprietor is able to afford it in their own right. Are we just talking a standard transfer of equity with the affordability assessment? Is that what we're talking here?
It would be. Yeah, it would be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Simple
Brilliant.
as that.
Fantastic. So I'm just, we have literally run out of time. We've got so many questions, and we are going to send those questions that you've asked today on the session around to all the lenders. I'm so sorry we've not been able to get around to them all, but I hope that's given you a really, really good overview of joint borrower sole proprietor, because it's such a great product. Speaking of that, one of the questions we have just been asked is, do you have separate products for this, or is it just, so when they're looking for products, are they separate JBSP products, or do they have to pick from your usual range? Samuel, what's the situation with Dudley?
Standard product range for us. Yeah, so take your pick.
Brilliant. Emily?
We've got our own range of joint borrower sole proprietor, all available on our website.
Fantastic. Frankie?
Exactly the same as what Emily says. So we have a bespoke product range which are available on our website or the sourcing systems.
Lovely. And then Holly for Saffron?
Yeah, exactly the same. Our one product is available on our website and sourcing systems under the first time buyer range.
Fantastic. Thank you everybody for your time this morning. That's been brilliant. I hope everybody's found that really useful. Our next criteria clinic is 2 weeks from today, and it is on bridging part 2, so bridging finance part 2, because that was just an epic session, and with the stamp duty holiday due to end, we presume it will at this stage, and then we also have our question of knowledge that we're doing, and that is on let me get this date right, that is in a week on Friday, so that is Friday the 30, no, what day is it? Week on Friday. It's not this Friday, the next Friday, 29th, I think that is. That's at 12 o'clock. That's also on bridging, but rather than talking about criteria, we're talking about what is bridging, how does it work, some of the quirks of bridging, what you can do with it, how you can do it, and also a little bit of the jargon, so, and understanding how you can place those cases. So the two things are very different. So there'll be emails sent around for those to sign up if you'd like to. But for this morning, thank you very much to Samuel, Emily, Holly and Frankie. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you found that helpful. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.